Coming up is Studio Nights.
And I can't wait to tell you all about it.
Good evening. My name is Meredith Masharia. Welcome to ACMI Studio Nights. We have an exciting evening tonight. We are here in the studio with Samantha Basili, and she's going to tell us all about the Mama projects that she's been working on in Central Africa. Good evening, Samantha Basili. How are you tonight?
Hi, Meredith. How are you? I'm fine.
You're looking great, really refreshed.
Thank you. You are too. It's great to see you.
I was really inspired by your stories that you're sharing, and I'm really curious, and I'm sure all the audience in the studio and beyond would like to know a little bit more about the Mama Project. Could you, first of all, tell us a little bit more about your background and how you arrived at this point?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much for talking with me. So I'll talk a little bit about my background and how that feeds into the Mama Project. The Mama Project is a non-for-profit organization that I founded in 2010, and it aims to increase the literacy and professional skills of women in developing countries. So kind of backtrack a little bit. So I was brought up in Massachusetts, and I attended the University of Edinburgh in Scotland to get a joint bachelor's, master's, and spent my third year abroad writing my thesis in Argentina. And then when I finished at Edinburgh, I went to Korea and I taught ESL, English as a Second Language, to Korean adults. And after that, I went to graduate school at Teachers College, Columbia University, and I studied international educational development, which basically means how can education help develop a country. And I got interested in Central African studies and education, and I founded it from there.
Wow, this is exciting. Wow, what a rich background. I'm hearing Korea, I'm hearing Argentina. Wow, and then how did you learn or how did you hear about Central Africa and what drew you to go to Africa?
Thanks, that's a great question. So I received a fellowship from the State Department to learn Swahili while I was in graduate school. And so in 2010, I learned Swahili, and I had a thesis to write. So I had said, hey, Swahili teacher, where are you from? And he said, I'm a refugee from the Congo. And I said, okay, can I go visit your family? He said, sure. So I went for a month visiting the eastern part of the Congo. I booked a flight to Rwanda, took $700 out of the ATM, taped it to my leg, took a bus to the Congo, and waited at customs until his family came and picked me up. So I stayed all the way up and down the eastern DRC, which is, if you look at a map, it's on the border with Uganda, with also Rwanda, Burundi, and then all the way down into Zambia. But I was in the eastern part, asking everyone the question, what are your problems and what do you think the solutions are? And I talked with servants, I talked with women, female victims of domestic violence, I talked with heads of household, ex-prisoners, women selling peanuts, girls selling peanuts on the streets, and they all said women's education was the way to resolve any problems. I said, great. So I went back with this information and I wrote my thesis in 2011 as a proposal to build a community center for women's literacy in a very special town in the eastern DRC. And it was approved by various Congolese and U.S. authorities. So I returned. I got the fellowship to learn Swahili again. So I brushed up a little bit. Said hey to my Swahili teacher. Went back to the Eastern Congo to kind of see the feasibility of this project, because it was all my research and all the voices that I heard over there told me that education for women was the way forward. So I said, okay, this is your idea. Let's see if one, it's feasible, and two, you're really interested. So in 2011, I returned and I piloted a literacy course for what I targeted 15 women to engage in the literacy course, but 137 women showed up.
Wow. A whole village.
So they all showed up. So I threw my curriculum out the window, which I had written, and for these 15 women, and I started teaching a pilot literacy course in 2011. So that was very successful. And when I returned to New York, I got together with some colleagues and we founded this organization, and we've been working in the DRC and now in Rwanda ever since.
Wow, this is absolutely fascinating. So, this was like a whirlwind of projects that came to bigger projects and a thesis, and now implementing all the way to your own nonprofit organization. Now, this was your first time in Africa. What were your impressions like? What were your experiences like? How were you able to, you know, I guess absorb some of the cultural experiences and differences?
Well, my goal when I first went there in 2010 was to really understand what a day in the life was. So I wanted to smell and breathe and taste and touch what everyone else did, to really understand life so that I could best listen to people. I already spoke Swahili and French and English, to best really listen to people but understand their intentions and kind of work with them to figure out, maybe to identify problems and figure out solutions. So it was really exciting for me to connect with people on that level and eat the food that they were eating and live as they lived and walk 2 hours to get water with a woman and then walk 2 hours back to make her food and just really understand what life is like.
In the day-to-day experience. So you probably noticed gender roles. There were probably some differences in gender roles and leadership. And so I think you went on to, I guess, interview the mayor and talk about different leadership roles. Also probably talking to children and women and what they wanted for themselves in the community. What kinds of things that could you talk about with regard to the literacy, the pilot literacy project? Yeah.
Sure. So the kind of the day-to-day, you were talking about leadership and female leadership and versus male leadership. So I'm going to go back and talk about the pilot literacy course because that comes up in the course. So it was about 2 weeks long, and I spent, since I thought it would be kind of a train the trainers course initially, I would train these 15 women and they would go out and train their fellow women in the community. And the point was to bridge the gap between the mother's education and the child's education, because in the home, usually it's the mother and the child together, and if the mother can't reinforce her child's education at home, then kind of the idea behind the Mama Project is, what is the point if a kid is taught to eat your fruits and vegetables, but mama doesn't have any fruits and vegetables, or wash your hands, but your mother never so how can we bridge that gap and reinforce that? So basically, threw that out the door because the 137 women showed up. So the first week was basic literacy, and I thought that it would be a little bit higher level. I taught the ABCs. And before I taught the ABCs, I taught them how to hold a pen.
Wow.
Because about 30 to 35% of the women had never touched a pen before. And when I use the word woman, I mean any woman with any female with a child. So all of my students were between the ages of 13 and 64. And so the first week, I taught how to hold a pen and then how to write the alphabet. And there's even a short clip of me and the women learning the alphabet on our website. And then the second week, I had them talk about leadership and talk about where they wanted a map of their town to show me their town and kind of take ownership of that. And then to map out their own community center and what they wanted it to look like. So during that week of talking about leadership and gender roles, and I learned a lot. I asked the women. I had gone on the Rachel Ray show a couple weeks before, and she gave me some magazines, and I had some magazines of Oprah and Michelle Obama showing them that there are some powerful Black women in the United States and everywhere. And these are some great examples for me, and what about you? And they said nothing. The class was silent. And I asked them, okay, speak up, ladies. Who do you look up to? And one of them raised their hand and said, there is no woman in this whole town that we can gain inspiration from. And that was really informative for me. So the second week, they designed their own community center for literacy, and the project was completely backed by the mayor of the town, right? So which is enormous for this type of project. So
I think we have a clip about that that kind
Okay.
of represents a little bit of that.
Wonderful.
So let's take a look and see what this clip looks like so we can see Samantha Vasili right there with the women in the field. Oh, that's such wonderful footage. I mean, so colorful. I mean, your leadership, of course, taking them through those ABCs. It was just so wonderful to see them. It's so engaged in your classroom. Obviously, it's beautiful to see them breastfeeding, taking care of their children right there, and still being engaged learners. What an experience.
It was really
powerful
me who learned from
experience.
them. They led me. They told me what they wanted to learn. I asked them, is this okay? And they said, yeah. And you could see so much joy in their faces because that's what they told me that they wanted to learn. Okay, then then whatever you would like to learn and what you think is useful, I will be so happy to teach you. And that's what they wanted to learn. So it was really exciting.
So inspiring, and those are some great dance moves as well. So inspiring. So what was it that the women then identified that they would want to have for then their community center? What did they envision after working with them and speaking with them?
So they kind of thought, they didn't even know what the possibilities were. They're like, well, maybe we'll have a classroom, maybe we'll have this. And I said, well, what about a babysitting area for your kids? And they said, what? I said, yeah, you don't have to hold two babies while you're trying to write. And they said, oh. I said, well, what about what kind of vocational skills would you like to learn? And, oh, I want to learn how to cook. Okay, let's get a cafe in there, and let's learn how to cook, and then you can sell at the cafe, and we can generate income for the center. And they said, oh, they put in a pharmacy. So I got 35 different drawings because they worked in big groups, and I put them all into one drawing and compiled this really cool idea for the literacy center. So it was in 2011 when I left. We had this great idea. We had this great idea going for us. And the classes you saw, that was kind of the first week of the literacy portion. So I would teach 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon with a break in between. And in between, I would give manicures to the girls, a lot of the girls who cleaned the dishes and cooked in the village. And I would put my music in my ear and in their ear, and I brought all my little manicure stuff, and they would tell me their stories. And that's a way that I got to really engage in the community in a meaningful way.
And definitely sounds like you bonded with them and in a profound way because you were right there with them and not having any expectations really over them, just letting them know that you're there to support them.
I tried.
Yeah. So it sounds like as well, I mean, they, embraced you, and they probably were hoping that maybe the information that you were able to gather about the community center would be something that you would be able to take back to the Mama Project, and then maybe in the future date be able to implement together with members in the community?
Absolutely. So I returned to the U.S. In 2011. In 2012, we got our team together, and we were going to go back, and there has been constant uprisings and violence in the area. And when we tried to go back, the entire area, and in 2013, had been completely razed and burnt by rebel forces that have come down from the northern part and all the way to the eastern part. So the village was completely burnt to a crisp, and that was really difficult to know and to see pictures of.
Yeah.
So that was...
So the community still is trying to recover, obviously, after 2013's disaster and tragedy. Have you been able to keep in touch with them at all to find out what's going on now? And
I've been able to keep in touch with someone in the area, but it's a little bit difficult.
so when you were there, did you stay in a host family, or where did you stay? And what was your accommodations like?
So I stayed with my Swahili teacher's family, and I stayed with his uncles and aunts and different people the whole time, and they just took me in, and I hung out with their family the whole time. It was really fun.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah, it was really great.
That way they could at least guide you if there's something you didn't know where to go.
Yeah,
for something
easy.
You had really easy, accessible information. So I wanted to ask you a little bit, if you could share with us a little bit about maybe some of the challenges that you may have been able to identify. In particular, there may have been somebody by the name of Maya that you have a story to share with us.
Right. So one of the biggest issues that I saw that prevented women from getting education, or that prevented women from being able to have a livelihood, was their inability to really take advantage of the farming. So I met one woman named Maya, and I have a short video of her in her home, and she had been displaced during the war, and she had been repatriated by an international organization and given about 2 months of food, and then that was it. And she was stranded kind of in this area. And she told me that she would go and harvest in her farm, and she would take her daughter with her. And she told me that it was worth getting raped every day for 2 weeks to provide food for her family, because there were rebel soldiers in the woods who wanted to take advantage of that farm also, and they used rape as a weapon of war in order to deter the women from going there and then take over their land. So I met her, and and it was like, talking with her about it was like it was something normal that happens. And she said she finally couldn't take it anymore, and her daughter got old enough where she would be a victim also. So they stopped going to the farms, and instead she showed me their plot of yams. And she had about 2 or 3 months until they grew, and she told me she's waiting for the yams to grow so that her family can eat. And so it was a big deterrent from not being able to sustain a livelihood and having a family, and perhaps that the education, vocational training, if they had access to it, might be one of a solution or a support in her issues.
I mean, just to be threatened in that sort of violent way.
Yeah.
I think we have a video as well about that. So if we can take a look at that as well.
Ezra, the leader of a volunteer group for social development in the area, explains a bit about the refugee situation. Ezra says that the area of Masisi used to be populated by civilians like Maya. At the outbreak of the Civil War, it was occupied by military forces. The population was forced to flee, and there was a constant fear of violence.
Quand il y a eu la guerre, depuis il y a 2 ans, il y a des acquisitions qui sont ici sans assistance, sans quoi, vous voyez comment les enfants n'étudient pas, vous voyez leurs maisons, leurs habitations, ils n'ont pas de moyens pour étudier. Donc ils nécessitent une assistance pour qu'ils puissent rentrer dans leur village d'origine.
Faiza asks questions to Maya, then translates for me. Maya is a displaced woman from the Congolese Civil War. She lived in a refugee camp further inland in Biriba when the war broke out in 1997. She returned here to her home village when the war calmed after 2003. Maya and her family used to have assistance from the refugee camp in Biriba. International aid groups assisted them for 1 month during Maya's transition to her hometown. Maya and her family now live without any assistance. Faiza says that they can only hope that they will be helped one day.
Fabulous footage. I'm so glad you were actually able to capture her story. I understand you also were able to meet with the mayor and have a conversation with him about what he thinks would be some solutions for the women Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So the village that I worked in, so I'm so lucky that she let me film. She welcomed me into her home. I'm so honored to be let into Maya's home. It was such a privilege. The mayor of Kichanga, the town where I piloted the literacy course in the small town that I worked in, he told me, he was a very forward-thinking man, just in general, and he said, we do not want you to come and with your sacks of grain to feed us. We don't want you to come with your doctors to heal us. We want you to teach us so we can harvest and cultivate ourselves, and teach us how to take care of ourselves so that we can heal and develop ourselves. And I thought that was so powerful, and what a wonderful way to work with a community that's so receptive to education, especially education of women.
Wow. Wonderful. Very insightful and progressive.
It was wonderful to work with him.
For him to see that. So you've had some pretty profound and very inspiring experiences to this point. What kind of impact has this had on you personally as well as professionally?
That's a really good question. This is me. My passion is literacy for empowerment, whatever that means to each person. So literacy, and literacy can mean different things to different people. It can mean I can learn how to speak and communicate with my mom, or I can learn and communicate in the business world, or I can learn how to, tie my shoes the right way. Literacy can mean so many things, and it means so many things to different people. And for my personal impact and development, this is, I love living this passion, and I'm so grateful that I can live this passion. I work in education in the Boston area also.
Fantastic. Wow. So now I understand you're going to be continuing with your passion, but you're heading to Rwanda. So can you tell us a little bit about the upcoming projects that you have in Rwanda?
Sure. So the DRC has become a little bit unstable in order to really roll out our literacy programs in a sustainable way. So I will be going to Rwanda. I leave on the 22nd of June, and I'll be there for about 3 weeks to assess the situation in Rwanda, especially with the influx of Congolese refugees, like people like Maya and people who have been affected by the war, come to countries like Rwanda. So I'll be working with government ministries and also working with hopefully the UN and other NGOs on the ground, and the refugee camp in order to develop a sustainable education plan for educating Rwandan displaced people who are living in Rwanda.
Wow. So if we wanted to find out and continue to find out more about your organization, the Mama Project, if we wanted to follow you in your travels, maybe even we'll get you lucky enough to have you back in the studio to find out, but how would we get into contact with you, or how would we be able to find out more about what you're doing in this next journey?
Sure. So we have our website, themamaproject.org, and my email, Samantha@themamaproject.org. And I'll be writing blog posts from the field from Rwanda, so you can follow the blog posts and the tweets, and we'll be uploading photos to Facebook on our Facebook page, so you can follow. I would love people to follow us, the Mama Project, in our journey as we make the next steps in Rwanda. So please follow us on our blog and on our website.
Beautiful. This is fantastic. I'm definitely going to be following you.
Thanks,
and
Meredith.
Your work, your stories that you've been telling, the pictures, the videos have been phenomenal and very touching, and I hope that other viewers will also be able to follow you, as this is just incredible work that you're doing.
Well, I'm the lucky one.
And so empowering, really so empowering. Empowering communities, empowering women, empowering children. And so that's all we have tonight for Studio Nights. We do have some women singing that we'd like to leave you with. And I think we have some video on that, as well as we'll have Samantha's Mama Project contact information, website, and hopefully you will all be able to follow her on her blog. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Samantha Vasily, for coming.
Thanks, Meredith, so much.
And thank you.
Yambela no kulanda ngichile vya kusosa pa did